Hi guys, welcome to my rotation about Witch/Warlock. I'll be doing a overview of the abilities they have, the two stances and what they are about. After that I will show you a rotation, AoE, single target, and two different single target rotations, and one particular skill that you want to avoid at all times, unless you're pretty confident. But even that might not be sufficient. So, with any delay, let's start. There is one thing that I would like to mention. There might be some background noise that you might hear. Excuse me for that. My kid and my girlfriend are currently in the living room, so might get loud sometimes. So let's start with the overview skill. Go to this target. Abilities. See, as you can see right now in the stance tab, you got curse stance, extermination stance. To switch between these two stances, you want to use R1. Right now I am in my extermination stance. If I tap R1 again, I get put back right into my curse stance. It doesn't have a cooldown, doesn't cost anything. You can just easily switch back and forth. Now, there are certain abilities in the extermination stance that after you use them, it automatically puts you back into the curse stance. And that's handy because those certain abilities consume your curses that you put on the target, and you need to apply it on the target as soon as you can. So while it puts you back into the curse stance, all you need to do is use the curses on the target again. Now, your main curse, your most important curse, is on your R2 button called Taint. You have two charge level. One, you just tap it, then it puts one curse on the enemy. What you want is 3 curses, so in order to get 3 curses, you tap it 3 times to get the 3 curses onto your enemy. You also have the second one. I don't know why it says not yet available, but if you hold R2 in, you actually cast it, and as soon as you let it go, that's when you apply all 3 levels of Taint at once. One thing I will need to mention is that you can only do this version, like hold cast Taint, so you can have 3 stacks of Taint on your target as soon as you let it go. You can only do this once, and that's when you enter combat for the first time. And let's test it out. I'm holding it, I charged it, let it go. 3 stacks of Taint, 9 seconds duration. Let it run out. Now, I'm holding R2 in again, and all it does is apply it one by one to a maximum of 3 stacks of Taint. Let's go back to your abilities. Let's talk about the abilities that are benefiting from Taint. One of the abilities that you want to use is Murder of Crows. Puts a radius, a 6-yard radius for 8 seconds, and does AoE damage to enemies near the target that is afflicted by Taint. The more levels of Taint, the more damage it does. Murder of Crows also benefits from Epidemic. Epidemic spreads your 2 curses Taint and Aging, which is this one. Reduce movement speed of the enemy and prevent them from using dash. So use Epidemic if you have multiple targets near you, near the target that you have focused and have Taint cast on. Epidemic spreads it to all nearby targets, and then if you use Murder of Crows, the radius increases. Let's test it out. Let's use R2. First time combat, so I can cast it. 3 levels of Taint. I'm using Murder of Crows. You can see the radius, right? Okay, let's wait till it's off cooldown. Let's see if I can get out of combat. Probably not. Either way, let's go back. 2 seconds. Okay. Casting 3 levels of Taint. Using Epidemic. Using Murder of Crows. As you can see, the radius even bigger and more crows attack. The downside about Murder of Crows is that as soon as the target dies that you use Murder of Crows on, the duration ends prematurely. So the best way to do this is if one big target is surrounded by a lot of small weaker adds, use him as your main target to cast Murder of Crows on. That way you are ensuring that the duration of Murder of Crows runs its full course, and even with extended time, because you know it attacks more adds, so the duration increases half a second each time, up to 7.5 seconds. Let's go back. Alright, the next thing you want to do when you use Taint, till you have 3 stacks, and depending on adds or no adds, single target, you either use Epidemic first. If just one target, you use Murder of Crows, and then you switch to Extermination Stance with R1. The next ability you want to use is Explosion of Darkness, EOD. It removes all level of Taint, inflicts them a certain amount of damage for each level each stack of Taint you have, and it compensates for the effect that Taint doesn't run its full duration, so it does a little bit extra damage for each level of Taint it also has, if the target is also less than 50% health. Once that is done, all your Taint stacks are consumed. Also, using this ability, Explosion of Darkness puts you right back into your cursed stance. And this is handy because you want to apply Taint on your target as soon as possible. Once you did that, you go back to Extermination Stance with R1, and you apply Living Helper. Spins a broom around the target for 7 seconds, inflicting a certain amount of damage and slowing them down. For the duration of the ability, Taint inflicts 5 times more damage to the target. So you see why Taint is helpful and that you want it on the target at all times. And if you use an ability that consumes it, you want to get it reapplied as soon as possible. Now you have this ability, Extermination, which almost does the exact same thing as Explosion of Darkness, but the damage is less than Explosion of Darkness, so there's no need to use Extermination. Plus Extermination uses like 40% more, 40 more points from of your mana. So while Explosion of Darkness does more damage, it also has a less requirement of mana. Now let's go back to before we go back to Curse Stance, I will note that Living Helper, after you use this skill, your mana ability is almost completed in this rotation. When your Explosion of Darkness is on cooldown and your Living Helper is on cooldown and your target still have Taint to it, if not reapply it, but if these two skills are on cooldown, you just use Killer Crows, and only use Killer Crows when you have nothing to cast that's on your duration. That's a part of your rotation. And since you have no mana, you cannot even cast Murder of Crows because it costs 300 mana points. Okay, so what you want to do is apply Killer of Crows, apply Taint on your target, and use Killer Crows until you see that you can use your mana on your target. Because when you use this, you have like a 40 seconds cooldown, right? So the first time you use your rotation, you can go back to Curse Stance. Once your Living Helper is done casting, you can use your R2 square ability, Dark Ritual, get mana back, almost full percent mana, and then you start your rotation all over again. But by the time that you cast Living Helper again, your mana gaining ability is still on cooldown. So what you want to do is hit R2 for taint, go to extermination, and just use this ability as a filler and reapply taint when it's about to run out. And you cannot use Killer Crows without taint. So you see why this ability is much more why taint is always an important thing to use. Now you can always use Ring of Fire if it's AoE, but then again it also consumes 200 mana, so you're stuck with Killer of Crows. One thing, let's go back to Extermination Stance. Read this ability again. Removes all level of taint from a target, inflicts a certain amount of damage for each level of taint, compensates for stopping taint prematurely, does a extra amount of damage if the target is less than 50% health. Now, you have read what it says. I have said what it reads, right? So, if we read this correctly, there's nothing else to it. But what it doesn't say is that if you use Explosion of Darkness, go back to Curse Stance, the cooldown of Dark Ritual is decreased with 10 seconds for each time you use Explosion of Darkness. But it doesn't say that anywhere, but that is what it does, and let's put it to the test. Let's use Dark Ritual, gain mana. Also, when you use Dark Ritual, every damage that you get is reduced by 90%, and you are immune to crowd control, particularly to CC stuff, not rooting effect. Crowd control is CC, don't confuse it with movement impairing effect. Okay, oh man, talk too much. Let's do it again. Use mana. Cast 3 level of taint. Switch. AOD. 20 seconds all of a sudden. 3 seconds again. Switch to AOD. Let's see. 40 seconds. 30 seconds. Use it. 2 seconds left. And you can fill up your mana again. But there's no need at the point because it doesn't take that much. Because Explosion of Darkness doesn't take that much mana. So let's bring in something else into the rotation. Sex of Taint. Let's use Murder of Crows. AOD. Taint, 3 sex. Stacks. Murder of Crows, and you should be off cooldown. With 4 uses of Explosion of Darkness, you should already be off cooldown with Dark Ritual. So, with that in mind, try to take advantage of Explosion of Darkness decreasing Dark Ritual cooldown when you need mana. It's very important to have mana, otherwise, you can't do anything. The rotation that I am currently using consists of Taint, which is R2, in Curse Stance, 3 secs, Murder of Crows, Triangle, in Curse Stance. Depending if there are more enemies, I use Square, which is Epidemic, spreads both Aging Curse and Taint Curse on all surrounding enemies. And then use Murder of Crows, which increases the radius, which also summons more crows and does more damage. Then you switch to Extermination Stance, you use Square, which is Explosion of Darkness, consumes all 3 stacks of taints or all stacks of taints, and put you back into the Curse Stance, apply taint, and then switch back to Extermination Stance and use Living Helper, which is circle in Extermination Stance, let it cast. Once it's out, switch back, manually reapply taint if it's needed, switch back to Extermination Stance and use Killer Crows as a filler until your mana ability is off cooldown and you can get your mana again and start the entire rotation all over again. This is the rotation that I use, so let's put it to the test. 3 levels of taint. Murder of Crows, switch, Explosion of Darkness, Automatic Incurse, 3 stacks again, switch, Living Helper. As you can see on the screen, my mana is already being depleted fast. Switch, gain mana. Reapply Taint, Murder of Crows, switch, Explosion of Darkness, Taint, 3 stacks, switch, Living Helper. Switch, reapply Taint, and then Killer Crows, kills off cooldown, Killer Crows, mana. Thing that I did wrong right now about a second is I didn't refresh Taint before I try to get mana, but that's okay. Make sure you do that next time. Killer Crows, switch, Explosion of Darkness, Taint, 3 levels, switch back, Living Helper. Wait till it's out, switch back, reapply mana, Killer Crows, stack, just keep attacking. Switch back, mana is available, use this. Reapply Taint, 3 stacks again, Killer Crows, switch, Explosion of Darkness, reapply 3 stacks of Taint, Living Helper. Get back into the curse stance ASAP, reapply your curse, use the Living Helper, Killer Crows, apply Taint again, Living Helper, reapply Taint, mana. And then Killer Crows again, switch, Explosion of Darkness, reapply 3 levels of Taint, Living Helper. As soon as it's done, you switch to your curse stance, Taint, and you can use Killer Crows. Just keep using it. You can hold R2 in to automatic cast. Level 2, 2 seconds left. Reapply it. Mana. That's the ability that I use. That's my rotation. Now, I'm using this staff, Matarka staff, because Neorin Hammer isn't available, but if Neorin Hammer is available into the second invasion as a range / shooter class, you will want to have that ability, that special weapon symbol added. But for now, Matarka staff is handy because it puts a debuff that is identical to Black Mark, which is this one. What it does is damage inflicted by blah 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 blah. Additional damage that can be inflicted using this effect can reduce 50% of your health, but basically increase the effectiveness of your next attack used against this target that's affected by Black Mark. And that's what you basically do with Matarka's staff. Here, puts leaves a mark on them, which is this. Okay, and every damage you do on a target that is afflicted by this effect gets extra damage. Neorin Hammer itself is, does way more damage. It is good, and it has a very long range. It's good at single target AoE, and when you are almost out of stacks, just use the ultimate, which does a big AoE damage to all targets inside. Matarka staff is handy for support, but you can also use it as a tank class, which you help let people do more damage against the boss or the ads, and you can use it as immune when you use its ultimate for this certain amount of time, 6 seconds. And it's a barrier, who doesn't like immune stuff? Okay, back to being about the witch. So what you want to do is just do recap, R2. You need R2. You need Taint for almost every ability because they benefit from it, and the more level of Taint you have, the better the damage. Depending on if there are multiple enemies or not. If they are, you use Epidemic to spread your Taint curse and your Aging curse, and then you use Murder of Crows, which gets more crows and does more damage when multiple enemies are affected by taint. Once you did that, you switch to Extermination Stance, use Explosion of Darkness, does a bunch of damage, actually a lot of damage. You automatically get back into your curse stance. You use R2 again, apply 3 levels of stacks of taint. Go back to Extermination Stance with R1, use Living Helper. By the time this ability ends, you will be out of mana. Go back into curse stance, use L2 square, Dark Ritual, get your mana up. Don't forget, using Explosion of Darkness decrease your Dark Ritual cooldown by 10 seconds for each time you use Explosion of Darkness. It doesn't say that anywhere in the tooltip, but it works. You can even test it out yourself if you think that my video wasn't proof enough. Now, for AoE, as I mentioned, 3 levels of taint, Epidemic to Spirit, Murder of Crows for AoE, but since Murder of Crows, can end prematurely, also, then you also want to use this ability. Hold on, let's show you. It's in the Extermination Stance. This is where this ability comes in handy. It costs more, but it is effective. It removes all taint affected from all enemies and inflicts the damage taint is supposed to do over its long duration prematurely. It doesn't do all the damage, but it does a huge amount of damage still, and it's AoE if there are multiple enemies affected by taint. So let's put it to the test. 3 levels of taint, spread with Epidemic, switch, triangle, boom. Isn't that beautiful? Anyway, I hope this was... Oh wait, I almost forgot. I don't have it. That's why I forgot to mention it. I'm still getting all my skills. But let's go to provinces and to the temple which is located here. Now, these two abilities here, Black Panthers and Transformation of PvP, so I won't mention that. And I won't do a guide for PvP rotation, but if you get the hang of your PvE rotation, then certain abilities that come to mind will be easy to remember and know what they do, so you can apply it in PvP. But just know that there isn't really a PvP rotation. It all happens on it all depends on the situation, the players, yourself, your teammates. So it just has to come naturally and depends on what is really is needed. Now, this ability here, Volatile Curse. It puts a curse on a target which lasts 7 seconds. This curse absorbs all incoming damage. Now, once that is done, it will release 300 to 500% damage to the main target and about 30 to 50% of damage to all enemies in 50-yard radius, knocking them down. Now, here comes the tricky part. In order for this ability to work, you will need to do a huge amount of damage. You will need to do a shit amount of damage. And like it says here, under normal circumstances, the witch needs help from their allies. If you do not, and I repeat, if you do not do the amount of damage that ability requires in 7 seconds, after those 7 seconds, it will just run out, and every single damage from everyone that you did on the target that is affected by a volatile curse will be for nothing. The curse will just run out and the enemy will have taken shit damage. It will have taken nothing. Let's go back to ability. One more thing to note is the more dangerous the enemy, the more dangerous the enemy you put this curse on, the more damage it requires. If you do not, and I repeat, if you do not meet that requirement, you will have wasted everybody's time and everybody's burst, and every single damage is basically just gone to waste. Even on a PC version, even with the 300 to 500 million prestige players, they still avoid this. So please, 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 if you are going to play a witch/warlock, do not use this ability. Especially do not use it in raids where people will be using their ultimates, their burst attack and whatever. Just avoid it like it's the Black Plague, okay? Because I'll tell you this, the warlock/witch are going to be the new hunters from World of Warcraft. Yeah. So please avoid using curse, volatile curse. It really isn't that special. People are still confused about it on the PC. You know how it actually works. What is the amount of damage it really needs? You know, it doesn't tell you what it needs. It just says it really needs a huge amount of damage, and the more stronger the enemy, the more damage you need. So, with that said, I will be taking my leave. I hope this video was helpful. I hope you take my advice on volatile curse, and yeah, have fun then.